I'll cut my speech in half now. No, just kidding. And today we're really gathered to celebrate all those who have joined our armed forces and worn the cloth of our nation. I remember as a small boy growing up, November 11th. It wasn't called Veterans Day. It was called Armistice Day. It wasn't until 1952 that the Eisenhower administration signed into law making November 11th Veterans Day. And what's important about that today is I think we should be thankful not only for those who have worn the cloth of our nation, but those who continue to serve our nation. It becomes harder and harder today as we are so divided to get young people to think seriously about a career or even starting a career in the military. And that's why this day is so important. It's also the 50th reunion of POWs for our 50 years of freedom and 50 years of our active duty forces leaving Vietnam. I like to start off my comments by saying if you were ever captured and held as a prisoner of war or by a dangerous enemy, would you not search for something that would give you hope for tomorrow? I know I did. For me, it was my family and our family history. It led me to the Navy. It was my faith in God and my religious training in St. Peter's School in Peekskill, New York. And finally, the faith in my country and my fellow POWs. It gave me strength and it gave me hope for tomorrow. As mentioned already, I was captured and just off the Holy Achievement Trail on November 22nd, 1969. 6 years to the exact day that John Kennedy was killed. That is an important date for me. Because you see, when I was a sophomore in high school, I was chosen out of a class of 27 students to be the one that would go to the dean's office and watch the inauguration. I remember that day very vividly because when the cameras came on live at NBC, who was broadcasting this across the nation, it was cold, it was windy, the sun was out, and the only guy not wearing a hat in the entire picture was the young John Kennedy, and that thick head of hair. What I remember that day is important more than ever today, and that's why I want to make 2 points. First, we all remember, and we hear, and Roger Hitchcock used for many years in his radio show, the start of and that was when he said, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And he stopped there. I want to give you the rest of the context because that's what's really important today. And it goes to the start of the speech where in 2 sentences, just in 2 sentences, he told us what he really thought about where we were and where we were going. And don't forget, there were no 10-second sound bites, no PowerPoint, no internet, no iPhones. So people really knew how to write and they used words exactly the way they were meant to be. So please bear with me as I try to read 2 sentences from the first inauguration of John F. Kennedy. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which our nation has always been committed today at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us will or ill, that we will pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assume the survival and the success of the liberty of mankind. Wow. Never have I heard. Did I want to join the Navy? You betcha. But when he got to the end of the speech, I want to give you the 2 sentences that really tied that all together. And it's the second sentence that gets left out of it. And would I say that sentence? You'll know why. I don't have to tell you. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And to my fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what together we can do in the cause of the freedom of all mankind. That's what drove young people like me in the 1960s to join the military and go off and fight in Vietnam. I spent my time in Vietnam in many different ways, and I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but I want to tell you, I was captured and they led me off to a base camp, and I was tied. They took like everything off of me except my Fruit of the Loom shorts. And they tied my arms behind a tree, and the tree was not that big, but it was 12 to 15 inches in diameter. And they set my butt, and then they tried to pull my arms up so my butt would be off the ground, but that didn't work too well. And they had me blindfolded, and it wasn't before long before I felt some tickling, and I was kind of looking below my blindfold, and I could see I was bleeding from my neck. So, and I knew that my helmet had gotten some damage because when I looked at that on the ground, I saw it had been damaged. But to make a long story short, after about a half an hour to an hour, I started feeling some things on my hip and in my stomach, and they were getting higher. I said, what the heck is that? And I looked down. The blood had gone down, and it was on the ground, and the ants were down there, and they saw, and here they come. And they had to eat lunch too. And I tried wiggling and all the rest, and finally a couple guards started throwing rocks at me and the ants, and then one guard came in and said, no, no, no. And he brushed them away and poured some hot tea into the hole so they would not come back that way. Later on that night, they took me from that tree and they took me and tied me to a bamboo rack. And they didn't tie me very tight. And somewhere around 2 o'clock, that cup of coffee last cup of coffee before I left the Constellation, it came back to haunt me. And so I rolled over and I sort of arranged to get my hands around to my front, and I started to urinate. But the stream was so strong, the young guard, who was only like 15 or 16 years old, heard this, and he thought I was trying to escape. So he gets the iron bar, he starts banging this iron thing, and now 50, 60 ground troops fighting every day, shooting at people with loaves, and they're up, and 2 or 3 of the bravest ones jump into the thing, and then they get me on my stomach, and then they're standing on me, another thing, and then they take some communication wire and they tie my hands behind my back, and then they roll me over and tie my ankles to the bamboo thing, and then they tied the wire was coming through the bamboo rack, and then they got underneath that, and they tied, and then they took a kind of a teak dowling wood. It was used for something else, but they took that and they wrapped that around me, and they started twisting it so that I was not moving my hands at all. In fact, the best part of it was I lost all feeling about after 5 to 8 minutes, and I never felt them again for a while. But it was, as the line from Macbeth said, "'Twas a rough night." And in the morning they came and untied me, and then I brought my hands, and I didn't see hands. I saw these big blue purple, and everything was sold, and I couldn't feel. I had no feeling in my fingers, which is normal because the nerves could pass over the wrist. And I had a lot of bleeding and lymph from my wrist. But did I get breakfast and a cup of tea? No, sir, not for me. They took me back to that tree and tied me again there. And the night crew was coming in and the day crew was going out. And everyone wanted to look at the bye-bye and kick some more dirt on me. And about 9 o'clock in the morning, I know now it was an officer. And he came into that little base camp and he saw me. Is this colors? I think we should stop and pay attention. sound the taps were sounding, I thought of 7 American patriots from Lulu who are no longer with us today. Physically. But they're with me in spirit, because they were quite a crew. And what I want to say really about this captivity was I suffered that first night, but when they realized that I was an American being held prisoner, it was quickly decided that we would start walking towards North Vietnam. And we did. And it took us about 6 days to get into North Vietnam. We had to go over the Trong Son Range, and that was a trip in itself. And then we had to get into a Jeep, and then we had to drive a day out of the foothills. And then we got in a minibus, and they had a canvas kind of phone booth in the front left compartment. And in any case, that's where I got to ride. And when we got to Hanoi, it was December 7th. So I went down on the day Kennedy was shot, and I got to Hanoi, Pearl Harbor Day. Somehow, I think the good Lord was talking to me in more ways than one. And when I think of that first night, when I was there, it was difficult. And then the interrogation started and all this. Finally, Christmas Eve came around, and they took me to a Christmas room with all my stuff, with the rice mats, the extra t-shirt, my maroon stripes, which I had placed very carefully in between the 2 rice mats, and I laid on them so I could press them, just like we used to do the old sailor uniforms. They were inside out and all this, and then when you roll them back out, you have a nice crease inside. And I had my maroons on, ready to go to the Christmas Eve service. Now we went to the Christmas room. When I came into the Christmas room, there was a little kind of thin Christmas tree with lights and trinkets on, and that were really thin. You could see right through the tree. It was sort of like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. And right next to it was a big poster of Santa Claus. And he was doing something strange. And I looked at it, and he's about ready to bowl. And he's like this, and his tongue's out of the side of his mouth, just like Charlie Brown. And then I noticed the caption, "This Christmas, have a ball." And then I look at the bowling ball more closely, and there's a little fuse coming down. And I started laughing because I realized, oh, some American drew this and pulled it over. I said, oh my God. And they said, what's so funny? What's so funny? What's funny? And then I realized, gosh, I might get really someone in trouble. I said, oh, I just was remembering Christmas in Happer, Pennsylvania, and Old York Road, and all the shops, and how each one had a different kind of Christmas tree in them, or Christmas ornaments and Christmas decoration in their windows, even the barber shop, and Tony Fatone, the jeweler, the hardware store. It never stopped. And so they all started, so, oh, good. And then all of a sudden, an American was pushed into the room, tried to turn her, and I heard the interpreter who spoke English very well say, oh, roommate. And they're waiting for him to come forward, and I heard roommate. So I took 2 steps forward and put out my hand and said, Lieutenant J.G. Jim Bedinger, United States Navy. And he looked at me, shouted, he's 6'2" or so, 6'1". Hey, he looked down and took my hand, shook it real firmly and said, Ernie Brace, civilian. From the time we left that room to the time we got to the jail cell, that guy's coughing, he's spitting, he's hacking. I shoot! I mean, it was a strange combination of a good and old sounds. I said, what the hell's wrong with this guy? He's like a Count of Monte Cristo. He's going to die on me in another week. He's so old. He must be sick. Well, I learned that they had taken the tap code 5x5, AFLQB, and they had assigned the A row to 1 cough, and F row to 2 coughs, and the spit to, and the hack, you know. And so it was a 5x5 matrix, and he had typed J. Bedinger, Laos, United States Navy, or USN. So the other prisoners, from the time we left, from the time we got to that jail cell, knew my name. Wow. That was amazing. And Ernie was an amazing guy. He was captured in 1965, in May. He'd gone 4.5 years without seeing an American or having an American as a roommate. He was kept incognito on the Laotian border for about 6 months, and then brought into Dien Bien Phu area, where he stayed until 1968, and that's when he was trucked in to the plantation. He was in a jail cell, and he kept hearing this guy rattling around on the other side, and he knew most of the prisoners were on the other side, but he was on the back side of the prison called the plantation. In any case, Ernie said that I thought they were trying to trick me because they said I wasn't to talk to any other prisoner. So I kind of ignored him for a day or two, but finally on the third day I put my ear to the wall. He says, "Hey buddy, if you can hear me, talk 2 times. Well, that's obviously American. Good boy, good boy. Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 days. He goes crazy. It's John McCain. So John McCain never got to shake Ernie's hand until Ernie got back to Balboa Hospital. When we got back here in the United States, 4 years, 3.5 years later. But one of the things that I remember on that first night was John kept. He was right next door to us when they moved him from the plantation over to the Wallow prison, and he was right next door to us. Every half an hour, on an hour, you could hear the bells ring in the tower, and on the half an hour, he would have a question of sports, and on the hour, he would have a question. Who won the Super Bowl? Who won the World Series? Who won the Stanley Cup? Who won the NBA championship? Who won who's Sparker's #1 team, college football team? How did Navy do against Army? That didn't come up. That comes up the next break. But I have to explain it. But in any case, around 2 o'clock in the morning, he wanted to know how the merger went between the AFL and the NFL. And I was about ready to try to tell Ernie, I've got to answer something. And Ernie's very concerned. He's never had another roommate. It's dark outside, but the lights always stayed inside for us at the Hanoi Hilton. So he doesn't want to get caught communicating on the first night with a roommate. And John was not too. John didn't have a roommate, and then he got a roommate in a week or two. But in any case, at 2 o'clock, he wanted to know the air, and before anybody could say anything, a voice on the other side in the jail cell to the other side said, "McCain, go to sleep, and that's an order." And the only thing he said was, "Aye, aye, CAG." And we never heard a single word from John McCain for the rest of the night, because the CAG was Admiral Jim Stockton. So I often tell audiences today, how can the JG and the Navy go wrong when they got naval leadership around them like that? It's hard. Given 50 years of freedom today, I am convinced that there were 3 things that really helped me survive those 3 years and 4 months. First, faith in God. Secondly, faith in our country. Something I think is a little lacking today, in our young people especially. And then third, faith in our family and friends, in particular my fellow POWs. These were great things that gave me hope and allowed me to resist the enemy. I also think the fact that some of us had a lot of experience in training in POW survival was very important to our speed up as new prisoners being adapted into the system. I worked clearly hard at trying to learn everything, and the hardest part was when came up on the wall. I could get over and go, but it sounded something like that. I just tapped the knife. That fast. It was like teletype. So it was very high. So I usually became the lookout in this tap coding, and it could be done on the floor, it could be done on the wall. And I learned very quickly how to wrap my cup and talk through the walls. And I also think one of the things that helped many of the POWs is by communicating. It was the oil of our resistance, because keeping touch with one another was a way of keeping in touch with our faith in our country. I want to close my remarks tonight by saying what I said exactly 50 years ago in March, 1 mile east of here. The plane rolled out on a runway, and we looked out all the port side, because we weren't going to see 141 anymore. We could actually have porthole windows, and we could look out. And we looked out, and there were 2 stories high bleachers in a big U shape. And I could see, even rolling out on the runway, that there were at least 10 or 15 microphones. They had this array of microphones, because back then they weren't sharing like they do today. But to make a long story short, they were talking about, hey, the longest POW's got to get off first. That's the way the peace treaty said. And I said, well, no, I don't think so. This is a big airplane. As I remember my Blue Jackets manual, the senior officer on board gets off first. No, Bedinger, you're getting off first. So the line was, I was going to get off first, and then the guy who was captured, closest to me and then the newest guy would get off last. Well, one of the chief assistants at Chimpville, who was a young Navy commander by the name of Owen Webster, who later became the admiral in charge of Chimpville, comes on and said, okay, I'm Commander Owen Webster, so-and-so, front and center, Commander so-and-so, something. And sure enough, he went Commander, Lieutenant Commander, Lieutenant. And my position in the line kept moving more comfortably. I was the last one off the plane. And I looked around and I could see the last car came up, and the driver with one person in the passenger seat got out and then opened the door to the rear, and then I saw him. So I had to say something. This is what I said, because John Kennedy had inspired me so much. Because we didn't just go for America, but we went for freedom-loving people the world over, and it really was about liberty. As a small boy growing up north of Philadelphia, my parents took me on many trips to downtown Philadelphia, and the school did too. We always ended up in Independence Hall. Back then, the Liberty Bell was not out on the lawn across the street, but it was housed right in the foyer, and it had a red curtain around it. And I remember in 2nd grade, I was like 8 or 9 years old. I was standing right in front of that crack, and I couldn't resist because so many others had, and I reached out and I touched that crack. And I wondered, did that bell ever ring? Today, I know it rang life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And not just for us at home, but for freedom-loving people of the world. You've helped to make that possible today. God bless you for that, and God bless America. And may I say tonight the same words to you. God bless you, and God bless America.